Hello and welcome to Primetime Pastimes, the podcast where we talk to people in the wrestling space about their passions outside of wrestling. I'm one of your hosts, Steve, and with me as always is the other host, Gav. Say hello, Gav.
Hello.
Looking extra goth today, Gav. Thank you so much. Well, keep the hand at the level of your eyes. Today's conversation is definitely a collector's piece indeed. Welcome to the podcast, the slave of fashion. Can it be Max Brooker? Hello, Max.
Yeah, mate.
Hello, how are we?
I am somewhat okay. How are you?
I am also somewhat okay on this evening.
Fantastic.
This is a fun change from the normal podcast, so
Well, exactly that. We like to be a little bit different. But before we talk about today's topic, we are going to talk about wrestling for about 10 minutes. So first question, what is it you do in wrestling? When did you first get involved in wrestling? What are your first memories of wrestling? Just talk us through that.
yeah. Well, if you don't know me, I'm Max Brooker. I've been a wrestler for 7, 8 years now. I've done various other things inside the wrestling space. I've refereed a couple hundred matches. I've helped run shows. I've helped put together shows. I've done all sorts. I've been a wrestling fan sort of my entire life, really. I always tell people that I wanted to be a Power Ranger first when I was a kid, and then I realized I couldn't be a Power Ranger, so I decided I wanted to be a professional wrestler. But that story's always kind of been a lie, because there was a middle bit, and the middle bit was I was a theatre kid for a little while, because the next logical step from Power Ranger was, if I can't be a real Power Ranger, I'll be an actor that plays a Power Ranger.
Absolutely.
And a big part. And a big part of that was what we're going to end up talking about today, which was it started my appreciation for musicals and musical theatre, which is something that has never really gone away, and people always seem to be quite surprised by when they find out.
I certainly was surprised when I saw a Hamilton t-shirt or jumper that you were wearing. But let's wait before we get into all that. So, what was the first time you remember watching? It's okay. Let's think about the first time you remember watching professional wrestling. What did you think about it? Was it quite an easy transition from Power Ranger to spandex?
Oh, easily. I think it was in my house a lot. So I was born in 1998, which means that, like, growing up, I had an older brother who was 8 years older than me, and a sister who was a couple of years older than that. So they were massively into it. So it was always on in our house. I remember being a kid, being told The Rock was retiring and crying. Mm-hmm. And being just devastated because I loved The Rock when I was a kid, and it dipped for a little while, I'd say, and then when I was sort of 9 or 10, about 2008, started really getting back into it. Mainly just because my friends were in school, and I didn't want to be left out, so I started watching it. We got Sky Sports. It was like, great, I can join in on this thing that everyone else is doing. And I remember watching Extreme Rules, One Night Stand, Extreme Rules in 2008, and Jeff Hardy had a Falls Count Anywhere match with Umaga, and I think that was it. Then. That was the moment when it was like, okay, this is the thing, and it's never gone away since. It's never gone away since.
Who did you warm to more? Was it Umaga or Jeff Hardy?
Oh, Jeff Hardy. And I think it was because, like, I'd heard my friends talk about, like, Matt and Jeff Hardy when they were into wrestling, and I wasn't really watching it. And I always remember going, what kind of guy's Jeff? Like, what kind of name is Jeff? In my head as a kid, being like, Jeff's not a cool name. He was Jeff, thinking about some sort of farmer or something. And then he came out, and if you go back and watch that match and picture a 10-year-old boy watching that, I was just like, oh my God, who is this guy? I need to know everything about him. And then that was it. He was my guy. He was my guy.
Has he continued to be your guy as you've grown as a knowledgeable person in wrestling, or have you looked back at other people and that's sort of taken precedent?
Yeah, I think I appreciate everyone a bit more now. I think back then I was just looking at things as a fan. I think I disliked people, and I don't think I really dislike many people now. If you know what I mean, I've learned to appreciate everyone. I still really, really do love Jeff Hardy, and I'm always rooting for him. But I definitely also wouldn't say that I think he's the best wrestler ever. But that was never really the point. I suppose when you're 10 years old, he was the coolest to me, so that meant he was the best.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, how has that changed now? Who would you say is the best wrestler? Other than that, who do you think you've taken more influence from in your wrestling career?
Well, that's a good question. I always, as I sort of got older and became more knowledgeable, I became like an ability guy. I was more about your ability than about anything else. Like I grew up to be like a William Regal guy mainly because he was the only English guy there at the time when I was growing up,
Yeah.
and it just so happened that he happens to be a brilliant wrestler as well. So that sort of spiraled my love of it. I'd say probably you've got your like your Daniel Bryans, who has to be, or Brian Danielson. I still call him Daniel Bryan. Big WWE mark, clearly. But yeah, he's got to be up there. I think it's very hard for me to say now because I think you could pick a category of wrestler and I could give you 5 for each category of people that I really like. For example, like Randy Orton as an overall wrestler is probably one of the best to have ever done it. And I think when I was first being taught, when I first got into wrestling, I didn't really appreciate that. And I was told to watch him and just appreciate everything he does and that he doesn't waste motion. Everything he does is so fluid, everything he does is so purposeful. So I think that has to be probably my shout of the most changed opinion, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
Definitely.
So that's you as a wrestler. Let's talk about the other things that you've done. I mean, obviously you've done a little bit of refereeing. What I really want to get into is your current sort of objective in wrestling, which is do you want to tell me what show you're running sometime soon?
Yeah. So April 18th, we're running a show down in Liverpool Irish Centre. It is myself in collaboration with Off the Page Wrestling. We'll be running our second CraicDown event there in that venue. We've got a lot of great matches planned. And the most important thing is we try and just make it fun for everyone. We don't take ourselves massively serious. It's just a fun night of wrestling entertainment that anyone can really come down to. So I'd really appreciate it if some of you came down and we saw some of you there.
And this is your second CraicDown show, and hopefully that's going to take off for you again in association with Off the Page. Currently, the Off the Page champion, I believe.
I am. While we still manage to keep hold of that up there, just sitting on my shelf. It's been a very, very long time. Obviously, Off the Page, I had a little hiatus there, and we tried to keep scheduling some defenses and keep some defenses going, and I think we did a good job of that. So I'm happy to continue to be the Off the Page champion and to continue to be the representative for that brand. It's been a real pleasure and a real opportunity to grow for me. So
what are the challenges you've faced as Max Booker, the Brooker?
Oh well, it's definitely given me a whole new appreciation of the challenges of promotion. I think once you start doing just the logistical end of things and you start trying to figure out budgets and the ring costs this and there's this many costs for promotion, and then every match has to have a budget, and then how can we best utilize this guy that costs this much and this guy that costs this much, and sell enough tickets, because it's one of those things. If I was just playing with my action figures or playing GM mode, it's a lot easier. When it's not your money and when it's not Off the Page's money on the line. So I think
fantasy booking's one thing.
Yeah, massively. It's a whole thing of you've got to try and balance everyone out and make sure that everyone looks the best, because if everyone looks the best, then you look the best. So
100%. Well, we wish you all the luck in the world for that moving forward, and obviously moving forward with your wrestling career. Let's wrap up the wrestling talk now, and let's talk about what I'm assuming many people already know. Obviously, you've talked about being a theatre kid. Today, we're going to talk about Phantom of the Opera, Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom of the Opera in particular. Before we go into a deep dive into that subject and your thoughts on that, I'm going to give you some quick fire facts, and then we'll continue. So, the musical is based on a novel by Gaston Leroux, which in itself is based on the true story of a young disfigured man called Eric, who after escaping the circus became an engineer and actually worked on the Opera Garnier in Paris, and I was asked to live under the catacombs, can't even say that word, next to the underground lake. So practically everything that ever went on after that move was blamed on the opera ghost Eric, including the death of a young concierge from a falling counterweight from their famous chandelier. So anyone that has seen the stage show will see some of those influences in the true story. There have been over 40 film adaptations of the novel, including several musical features. The 1986 musical is the longest running show in Broadway history and second on the West End, only behind Les Miserables. The gross is over $6 billion, seen by 140 million people across 41 countries. The chandelier is made from 6,000 beads. There's 230 costumes, 211 wigs, and the show has 150 trapdoors, 281 candles, and 10 smoke machines, and one very, very faulty boat. Magician Paul Daniels was one of the technical advisors of the dozens of practical effects and tricks for the show. And again, I've mentioned that they were plagued with failures, including the original intention of using live doves, mechanical rats, and horses that were abandoned early because they didn't work. The boat was a remote control, and the signal kept getting interfered with by the local fire brigade. So that kept breaking down. Princess Diana famously serenaded the now King Charles, in which everyone agrees who has seen it was incredibly cringy, and fans of The Crown will have seen a reenactment of that recently. So, sour facts. Let's explore our feelings. So, hello, Kat. Lovely to see you. A cat's just crawled on Gav. So, let's talk about you being a theatre kid before we get into the actual fandom. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, well, so I think it happened sort of accidentally. Like my sister went to a drama school, just sort of a youth drama school, and I think my mum sort of saw it as a thing of like, well, I'll take him as well. And I think what had happened was I used to go to a childminder while my mum was at work, and one day the film that she decided to put on was the 99 version of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Cool, yeah.
And I remember, as many kids do, the last thing I'd seen was the best thing I'd seen. So I went home to my mum and I was like, "Oh, can we get it? Can we get it on video? Can I watch it again? Can we?" And I didn't really realise this at the time, but my mum was always a massive Donny Osmond fan. So this was the first time that she was like, "Yeah, okay, you want to watch Donny Osmond tonight? Sounds, we'll do that. We'll do that." And so I was like, "Oh, okay." She said yes to something, and that sort of started the thing. And as soon as she realised there was that sort of little gap there, she was like, "Well, why don't you go along with your sister to stage school?" And that's what I did. And then I think that was up until the age of about 8 or 9. That's sort of what I did. And it was tremendously fun. I didn't really understand that what I was doing was strange, that was different to any of the other kids and stuff. And it sort of got to the point where I grew out of it because I'd been doing it for so long when I was younger, and sort of the way that all kids do. You know, they go to karate or something, and then they get to a certain age and they go, "No, I can't really be bothered with this anymore." It was the same for me, and it wasn't for a while that I really went back and looked at musical theatre again. I was a teenager. I was cool. I was more worried about drinking and smoking in the park with my friends and looking boss. And I don't think
Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny how close that is to our experiences with wrestling as well?
Yeah. Oh, massively. I think for me, I always kept one foot in wrestling. Like, I think there was never a WrestleMania I missed. I always at least watched WrestleMania every year. I'd sort of occasionally check the news websites and stuff. But I always had one foot in it. I think with musical theatre, though, I just left it behind. Just went, no, it's not me anymore. Grown out of it. And then one day I was 16 and I was just watching things on YouTube. And I think the 2012 recording, the 25th anniversary recording of Phantom of the Opera at the Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah, I believe so. 25th year one,
yeah. That was just on YouTube. Someone had uploaded that to YouTube. And I think I just clicked on it and went, okay, I'll watch 10 minutes. And then I watched the whole thing. And it was like the light had been flicked on in a very dark room for a while, and I was like, oh, this is something that I did once love and still do. So I think Phantom is a really special thing for me in that regard, because it is the thing that woke my interest back up.
Had you seen Phantom before, or was this the first time you were seeing it?
No, so when I was a theatre kid, I the only musical I'd ever watched the whole way through, I think I'd maybe seen Oliver Twist and didn't really like it because we were doing it. I was performing in it at the time, and I didn't really care. I just wanted to know the songs that I needed to sing. That was all I was ever really bothered about. So I knew songs from all these different musicals, but I'd only ever seen one all the way through, and enjoyed it. So
you'll know this as well. The stage productions, they don't have the rights to put on the entire show, so a lot of the times they will have these collaborative things where they'll do 5 songs from Phantom, 5. From
yeah, absolutely. That was 100% it. We do showcases and stuff like that, and everyone would sort of get songs to sing, and they'd all be different songs from different musicals and stuff. And a big part of my rediscovery of musicals was watching musicals and then going, oh, that's where that song's from. I had no idea. And I think for Phantom of the Opera, I always knew, obviously, that the title song is very sort of iconic, so I was always aware of that. And I was always aware of Music of the Night. I think mainly because it was on one of the endless amounts of compilation CDs that I used to get given all the time when I was a kid, which is one of them where it was always the same 50 songs from the same 50 musicals, and they just repackage them every year and put them out on CDs. And every year I'd get given one, and every year I'd just listen to it all like I hadn't listened to it last year. And maybe there'd be one different song on there, and I'd cherish that new song. But I'd never really watched them in the context. So I think it was I hadn't really had any of the context for what the story was. I just thought the Phantom of the Opera was a guy in a mask. I probably had more familiarity with the Simpsons spoof. Phantom of the Opera, that was more of my understanding of what Phantom of the Opera was based off the pop culture references to it rather than the actual piece itself.
Well, there's a lot of pop culture references to Phantom. As I said, there's numerous film versions of it. With the actual song, The Phantom of the Opera, the duet, The Phantom of the Opera, very, very poppy. This was one of my talking points. It's very different to the rest of the musical. It's one of those songs like the other sort of good example of it is probably the Time Warp from Rocky Horror Picture Show. You can just take that and it's its own thing. I'm guessing by your answer, you sort of feel the same way about that.
Yeah, well, I think 100%, yeah. It absolutely is. I think it comes from that culture of, if you look at where it was, I tend to think of it as Lloyd Webber's sort of first real sort of grown up, I've nailed this musical. Like, again, because Josephine and My Technical Dreamcoat was his first ever, and it was built as a 20-minute piece for a school choir, which he then expanded. And if you watch that, you can really see it. Whereas if you watch this, it's a piece, it's a full piece. But I think one of the few things that is the legacy of his earlier career was the concept albums. Joseph was a concept album, Jesus Christ Superstar was a concept album. They had to be sold on singles, and they've both done very successfully with singles. What Any Dream Will Do was like top of the chart.
It was top 5, yeah.
For a very long time, and Jesus Christ Superstar had a title track that was very distinguishably a title track, which again you can probably argue is actually quite differently tonally from the rest of that piece as well. So I think that's the one I think that's the one legacy of his concept album days, is he had to have like the elevator pitch song of like, let's hook people in, and then once they're in based on that, then we'll get them with the rest of it. Because I also think lyrically it doesn't really fit where it is.
Lyrically, they did go through a lot of changes with the lyrics. I don't know if you know this, but they went through several different lyricists.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially with that song in particular, it does lift right out. I think it could be replaced with a much more purposeful song in that place in the narrative. Because it's
the elevator hook song, like you say.
Yeah, it's the elevator hook, and it's a travel montage as well. For the function of the show, All it is it's taking us from the theatre to underground and the Phantom's Lair. So it's not. It doesn't really serve a narrative function, nowhere near as much as Music as the Night does, which comes immediately afterwards. Yeah. So yeah, I do think it's a massive sidestep almost, but I can't find the time to be mad at it because I think it is really iconic, and I think even if he did steal the progression from Pink Floyd or whoever it was,
yeah,
I can't find the space to be angry at it because it is so iconic. And you know what? If films have title sequences, this is the James Bond opening title sequence.
Very much so, and he plagiarized himself as well. I mean, Starlight Express, there was very, very similar stuff from Starlight Express that ended up in this. You mentioned Jesus Christ Superstar. You mentioned Joseph, which is very, very funny because I was going to bring those up as well because those are two productions that have gone through mass changes as the years have gone on.
Yeah,
but Phantom never really has. Why do you think that is?
No, well, I think part of it is as a piece. It is a pastiche of opera, and it is almost like how he sat down to go, I want to write an opera, but I can never sell an opera in the 1970s, 1980s. How can I do that? Okay, I'll write a musical, but I'm going to make it as operatic as I possibly can. So I think as a piece, it's a meta narrative on opera whilst also being a modern opera. So I think once you start making changes, you start watering down what it is and what it's saying. Especially because when I first saw it, it was the filmed version of the Royal Albert Hall, which has to take quite a lot of liberties because of the space that they're in.
They don't have the layout of the Majesty's Palladium, and it doesn't have the candelabras coming up from the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no elephants. There's no. Yeah. I've literally just finished watching it an hour ago, so we could talk about it. And the thing I realised was in the finale, to jump too ahead, but in the Phantom's Lair, there's a gate that lowers, and it serves as separation later in the plot. And then when you take that away because they had to for the 25th anniversary because you can't make a gate big enough that can drop down the Royal Albert Hall, they have to have the Phantom physically block the space, and it changes the narrative and it changes the implications of that moment in a way that a physical gate doesn't necessitate. It doesn't necessitate the Phantom to ever get physical in that moment. Whereas without it, now he does. So I think when you start making changes as a whole, for example, so again, my fiance came with me when we first went to go see it in London, and she'd watched it with me in the 25th anniversary. And when I tell you that she absolutely jumped out of her skin when the chandelier fell, it's absolutely jumped out of her skin, and she went, I had no idea that was going to happen. And I went, what did you think? And she went, I thought it just exploded.
Yeah, because that's what in the 25th. Yeah,
in the 25th, because they can't drop a chandelier. Right. And the way that it looks like, if you sit in the right spot, which I was very lucky enough that I got good seats the first time I saw Phantom, it looks like it drops into the audience.
It really does.
And it does give the perspective of, the chandelier's dropped and killed people, which is what it is for the sake of the narrative. People are supposed to have died.
You also missed several other things out from that as well, because the rat catcher death, positively terrifying in the stage show. Bam, from nowhere. And the decapitation at the end.
Well, the rat catcher death, and you can see it coming, and it's really, really telegraphed in the 25th. So I think that if you are fortunate enough to be able to go and see it in London, watch the 25th in comparison with it, and that's made with all the best intentions in the world. They've made that it's all as much as you can get to the original team, but they've had to make changes, and in the changes, they've changed the nature of the narrative, which I think is interesting. And when you like something as much as I do, I'll watch you change the narrative a million times because I can appreciate the playing around with the form. But I do think, like for the example of my fiance, she was missing something from the whole experience that she hadn't got because they'd made a change. So I think you sort of have to keep it the same, or you have to change everything. And I don't think there's anyone capable of changing Phantom. Don't reinvent the wheel. If it's not broken, so don't bother fixing it. I think
you have to adapt, but not change.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think adapt the effects, update them, modernize them slightly where you need to. Change the choreography if you need to change the choreography. But I think when it's a piece like Phantom that is successful and that hasn't closed, barring COVID and a refurbishment, and you say it's second to Les Mis, but Les Mis is a different production to what it was now.
That's true.
It's changed. It's changed so much. It's changed minimally comparatively. Like, it's not a big set, Les Mis, but Les Mis used to be a no-set musical.
I feel like you can have Les Mis without the props and it still gives
a
powerful show.
Exactly. Eventually, I'm sure we will get around to talking about Les Mis fully. But their whole thing is that when the barricade turns up, it's the first time that you've seen a massive set piece, so you're drawn into it. But when I went to go see Les Mis in London just after it had reopened, the sets were great, but there were sets. And I remember going, "Oh, I've not seen the original Les Mis." So you can tell me it's the original run. You can tell me it's never closed apart from that refurbishment during COVID. But when you brought it back, it was a different production. The Phantom that I saw was the Phantom, barring the people, barring some better animatronics. It was the same Phantom that you would have seen a month after it opened, a year after it opened, 10 years after it opened. And I think that's a really valuable thing. I think that sort of elevates it. The further and further we go with that, I think at some point we have to start looking at it like almost like a Shakespeare level of text, where it's this is the thing, and sure, maybe you can vary it slightly. And people have, I think, in foreign languages, if I'm correct.
Yes, that is true.
There've been like a South Korean sort of almost cyberpunky, from what I've heard, production and stuff like that. So I don't know whether it's a lyrical context
I don't think that was Cameron McIntosh or anything involved in that, though. So I don't know if that's an official reproduction. Because I did come across that, but I'm not sure where the line is with that. Whether it's Cameron McIntosh and Andrew Lloyd Webber, or whether it's just their version and it's a rights thing.
Yeah, well, it could even just be like I say, that process of. It's a piece in and of itself, and maybe when you're translating that to different languages, the metaphors don't hold, so maybe you have to find different metaphors. So that's perfectly understandable. But I do think, I think Phantom is really in a league of its own when it comes to those sort of things.
So we've established that we can't change much about that without sort of altering the overall impact that it has. But one question I've got for you is, and you set me up nicely for this, talking about how it was based as a play on the actual opera itself and the operatics. The first 10 minutes of this is an opera.
Yes, yeah.
It very much is an opera. And a lot of people have said if they were going to change one thing or remove one aspect of the show, they would often come down on the opera aspect of it and maybe jump ahead in the story a little bit quicker. Do you agree with that, or do you think it's integral to the show?
I do think it's integral. I think if we can trust people enough, so like let's use like James Bond as an example. James Bond doesn't smash into the credits. James Bond spends 10 minutes going, "This is what we're doing. Here's a little visionette, and here's how now we can play the theme song," which I do think is probably where the actual title track makes sense, where it is, because that's sort of the point of like, okay, the prologue's over.
We're now getting into it.
I would view it as a whole extended prologue, because it is 50. I think it's 15 minutes. I think it's 15, 20.
Something like that. Yeah, it's a chunk.
It is a big chunk, but I think in that chunk you get, even if you have no understanding of what's going on here, I think the auction scene sets it up quite nicely and quite mysteriously. I think you go straight into Carlotta singing after the overture, and that introduces her brilliantly. We're in the opera up until Piangi comes in, and then Piangi flubs his line, and then we get to understand who they both are as characters, because we get to understand that they're both very proud characters. They're both
quite stereotypical as well.
Yeah, massive.
Well. Yeah.
Well, yeah, massively stereotypical, because this is the space where Lloyd Webber operates, because he's he's half. He's half composer, half weirdo.
Yeah.
When he's at his best, he's operating in a not even parody, but like a pastiche homage place.
A meta,
Joseph and the Most Technical Dreamcoat you only really understand that if you understand that it's a product of the 1960s and it's a product of a bunch of different genres from the 1960s. Jesus Christ Superstar is a hair rock musical, and then we have this, which is an opera, and then you can start arguing that the weird stuff, the stuff that doesn't do brilliantly, are the bits where he starts losing those sort of really clear narratives, where he starts taking himself a little bit almost too seriously and going, no, I can create wholesale from whole cloth this concept.
He does feel like a man that does take himself too seriously, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, massive. Well, but we've not touched on the most important thing about this musical, which is that it's written about him and his wife. He is the Phantom of the Opera. He is the Phantom of the Opera, and I think, again, when you start looking at the layers, I think if you're watching this for the first time, just watch it as a story. Watch it as a story and enjoy it.
I'm going to be sensitive to the fact that Gav isn't that much aware of the Phantom. So explain to us a little bit more what you mean about the dynamic of him and his wife and who his wife is. Right.
So, Andrew Lloyd Webber has had a couple of wives, a few of them called Sarah, which is quite strange. But the one that we're concerned with is Sarah Brightman, who is an incredible singer, incredible opera singer, incredible classical singer. And when you look into the narrative of the production of this musical, you'll often be sold the story that he picked up a book of Phantom of the Opera and was like, I must adapt this. And I don't really buy that.
I agree.
Because that's his story. It's so transparently him. He is, and so the thing that we've not said here is that the person that he casts as Christine, as the love interest of the Phantom, as the main damsel in distress, was Sarah Brightman. The role was written for her, entirely written for her.
Just prior to this, she lost her heart to a Starship Trooper as well. So it was a hell of a year for her.
Well, yeah, like she was his muse, and I'm not particularly begrudging anyone for having a muse.
Yes.
But it's the second that you learn that piece of information and you start watching this again and then going, well, who is the character of the Phantom? And especially if you go and read the book, because I did that when I was 16, and I was like, what on earth is this? I was like, the Phantom's not some romantic.
No, absolutely not.
Hero. He's an absolute horrible villain. It's a pulp horror story. It's like The Invisible Man, or like it's a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of
I'd like to give you another comparison here as well, which is something that's been very much on my mind for years, is the toxicity with love affair. A lot of people come out of Phantom and say things like, oh, she should have ended up with a Phantom instead of Raoul. It's like,
that's a first watch.
Yeah,
that's on the first watch, yeah. The first watch, because that is what you take away from it, the first watch. And especially, as we're talking about changing the narrative and how the 25th made subtle changes, there's a moment at the end of the 25th where Christine hesitates on the stairs, heading away from the Phantom, and she sings the first few bars of All I Ask of You, and then Raoul comes back down the stairs, takes her hand, and takes her away from the Phantom. In the stage show, in the original stage show, that happens off screen, like that happens off stage. So the implication is that she's already made the choice and they're just singing to each other. Whereas if you watch that 25th anniversary, like a lot of people do for the first time, you will take from that she is a lot more conflicted. And we can get in my reasons for that. I think that is because, get into it quickly, is that Love Never Dies premiered the year before.
And Love Never Dies is the sequel, to anyone that doesn't know.
Yeah, so for anyone that doesn't know, Love Never Dies is the much maligned, but I love it. Genuinely love Love Never Dies. I think it's great. But it came out the year before they filmed this 25th anniversary special, and the two leads who originated Phantom and Christine and Love Never Die are the two leads in the 25th anniversary special. And to not spoil it too much, Love Never Dies does a lot of retconning of the relationship. Yeah. And it makes Christine a lot more of a willing participant in that relationship than she actually is, given the information that you're given in the original stage show.
Well, what I like about the original one as well.
Yeah,
no, I agree. What I like about the original one as well is that very much they're like you say they're gone, they're off screen. It's almost like they are then haunting him, because you can hear them saying, "All I ask of you," but the focus is very much on a phantom that is breaking down.
Well, again, because all I ask of you, and we're jumping all over the show here, but all I ask of you, that refrain, that harks back to the moment that the phantom snaps is about halfway through the show, and it's when he hears them sing "All I Ask of You" to each other. And again, we should probably sort of précis the plot for people who aren't aware that there's a.
I think if we're this far in,
we're this deep. Well, yeah. So again, it's a love triangle. It's a love triangle. There's a young opera singer. She's been taking lessons from a mysterious figure in sort of the walls and the ducts of the opera house. No one's really sure what's going on. There's lots of mysterious happenings at this opera house. And then her childhood love, best friend, comes back into the picture, and he's very rich. He is very rich man. And he is your Prince Charming. And he's in the Disney film, he'd be the villain. He's the charming man. And again, I think that interprets the way that people look at it, because they look at it through the Disney film lens of things. He's the stiff upper lip, upper class guy. And he comes in. Not a lot of character apart from being, he's rich, he's the patron of the opera house now, so he's paying for all the shows, so sort of his say goes. He's the producer in the modern terms. He's the Cameron Mackintosh to the Lloyd Webber. And I don't know whether there's any sort of parallel there in the relationship. I don't know. But maybe. But anyway, the whole story is this massive love triangle. But the thing that people miss, which is what you said, is that in the original text that we have, the Phantom isn't. He's not an equal partner in this.
No,
he's the proto incel.
Mm-hmm. Very much.
She wants a teacher. She wants a guardian. She believes that when her dad died, he promised that he was going to send an angel of music to look after her, and the Phantom figures this out and decides to prey on this and become her angel of music. And
it all ends happily.
Yeah, and a beautiful relationship forms, and she should end up with that guy who pretended to be the spirit of her dead father's ghost of music to teach her how to sing better, so she should marry him. It makes complete sense, and
why shouldn't? Time.
Yeah, absolutely, tale of all this time, and people look at that, and I think the only thing that makes the Phantom redeemable is they are those moments we talked about. Go back to where we were about All I Ask of You. The Phantom is sort of, he's in power, but he's not really been. He's not been particularly. He's killed a guy. He's killed a guy already. So I don't know where I'm reaching there. He's killed a guy who was actively taunting him.
Yes,
maybe you can say, because Piangi's warned. Not Piangi. Bouquet. Bouquet did the Lord of the Flies. He's killed during one of the performances because the Phantom isn't obeyed a couple of times. But at this point, he's still in his relationship with Christine. Apart from one brief moment, he's portrayed as very caring of her. He is tender to her.
I think you nailed it with incel, because this is very much a guy like, why can't I have this? Why am I not owed this? So you nailed it with that.
Yeah, and I think the thing is when you start getting into the relationship between Lloyd Webber and his wife, the parallel is how can we create such beautiful art together and not be meant for each other?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you don't have to be. You can be good creative partners without this woman being in, you know what I mean, being obliged to you in any sort of way. And I think that's one of the things that, again, the 25th anniversary production changed quite a lot, because I do feel like you watch that the entire way through, and Sierra Bogas, who is brilliant in that, but she plays that like she is in love with the Phantom the entire time. I find anyway.
Seduced at the very least. She's interested. She's intrigued by it.
And I remember.
Go on.
I was going to say, I remember on my first watch not realizing, because there's another aspect which is apparent in the book, is that the Phantom is a hypnotist, and he's been hypnotizing her the entire time. And I didn't pick that up until Christine's big sort of fourth act song, which is "Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again," which is so far placed into the musical, before I realized that, oh no, he's not just giving her sweet words and convincing her. He's actively hypnotizing this woman. Like he's controlling her. It's supernatural. She's a victim. She's a victim of assault. Like there's no other way that you can wrap that. It's emotional manipulation and abuse. And I always find that, again, just rewatching it over the past 2 days, that the Phantom's descent is how I watch that musical now.
Yeah, no, I get it. And what I was going to say about the four characters that I sort of always go back to with people that everyone says, oh, they were such a lovely couple, and they hold them on these high esteems, is the Phantom and Christine, Romeo and Juliet, the Joker and Harley Quinn, and Hamlet and his bird. All these relationships are absolutely toxic, but we look at it at face value and go, oh, isn't it nice? But that rewatch, you think, hold on, there's nothing quite right here.
Yeah, it's
for the Phantom, for me, I thought it was a horror thing from Hammer Horror, like American horror films. That's
so I think there is. Yeah, well, that's the nature of the book. That is the nature of the book. But then you add Andrew Lloyd Webber to it, and he filters this through his relationship with his wife, and it then becomes the story of a tortured composer.
Still very much a horror, though. I think it is.
Yeah, I think
I remember it being controversial in the news as well a little bit when he was with her. There was a lot of stories.
They were both married to other people.
Yeah,
and the relationship didn't last.
No,
about 4 or 5 years, wasn't it? 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and I think again, Lloyd Webber loves his muses. He has them. He will swap through them from years. Like it was Nicole Scherzinger a couple of years ago, and before that it was Sierra Bogas, who's in the 25th anniversary. He goes through periods of, and then it was in Cinderella. Oh God, I can't remember her name. But she was in Cinderella anyway. But she was in Cinderella. She was in Heathers. She's very, very good, and I cannot remember her name. Or maybe Carrie Ann Fletcher, I think. Anyway, but that was The point being is he goes through these periods where he has these muses, and he's now got to the point where he has all these projects where he can just plug them into. Whereas at the time it was like, no, I have to. It was really, I have to write something for her, and I think that is the lens through which I think that's the lens through which he changes the narrative. The book has to be put through the lens of his relationship, how he views himself, which I think is really educational. If you want to know anything about Andrew Lloyd Webber, like just watch this and think about this is this man's self-portrait in 1983, 1984. This is how he looks at himself and his relationship, and that's fascinating. That
it is
that he had because I'd say it's not. I wouldn't call it a happy romance at all. I think it's a story about an abusive relationship, and I think you can take the sequel into consideration later about how that changed the dynamic, because the sequel still isn't about an abusive relationship, but it's about the different dynamics that the original abusive relationship produced 10 years, 20 years down the line.
Isn't it funny? Because go on, you carry on.
No, I was going to say it's literally that changes the context, and I think that again is, if you look at Love Never Dies as how Lloyd Webber now perceives that period of time in his life, because again, the Phantom in Love Never Dies, the Phantom, you find him writing vaudeville, on Coney Island in the 1920s. And I think that's how Lloyd Webber ends up looking at himself. I think the whole thing is a big metaphor. Yeah, I think the whole thing is a big metaphor. I think he is looking for new muses. And again, not to get too in deep to it, but there's a character who's a very minor character in Phantom who becomes a major character in Love Never Dies, who is his replacement muse for Christine, because Christine chooses to go off with Raoul. And he's not satisfied with her, and he doesn't care about it because all he wants is Christine back.
But do you not think this is again going into the incel thing? Because what I was going to say was, it very much feels like in the first. Sorry, I say the first. In Phantom of the Opera, he's very much there's undertones of this is my lust, but I don't deserve this.
Yes,
I view myself as this.
Yeah, it's almost incel is almost a bit too unkind to it, because incels are like, I don't want this. The character of the Phantom might be an incel, but the Lloyd Webber in that moment writing the Phantom is he's writing his worst aspects, and I think that's an incredibly it's a bold thing to do, because we can sit here 40 years later and talk about that and go, this is an insight into this man. And that's a bold thing to do. I don't find that. That's not there in Jesus Christ Superstar. It's not there in Joseph the Most Technical Dreamcoat. It's not really there in Cat's Memory, maybe. But maybe, but it's not really there in that it's a really, really sort of brave position to put himself in. And I think
Memory again.
Go on.
Sorry, go on. I'm stepping.
No, go on. Memory. Go on.
I was going to say, Memory is another one of those songs which is very much a piece that is separate to the rest of Cats. So it wouldn't surprise me if that is something he's wrote that's personal and then built things around it. So that was my thought foresight on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, this relationship is clearly so absolutely dominant for him, because again, I don't want to talk too much about Love Never Dies, because most people who've seen Phantom haven't seen Love Never Dies, but it's called Love Never Dies, and the title track is an aria that the Phantom essentially entraps Christine into coming and singing, and it's called Love Never Dies, Love Never Falters. They're all the lyrics, and it's about how throughout the years, even though circumstances change, that you will always love the people that you love. And it's, again, just, you talk about it and then you go, oh, it's really on the nose, actually. You talk about it now and you go, it's a bit hack. It's sort of so on the nose.
Very on the nose.
But it's, again, this is, I think it's one of, ignore the ethics and the moral implications about their relationship and what the portrayal of the Phantom will imply to that. I think it's one of the most remarkable portrayals of an actual relationship and actual people through metaphor that I've ever come across.
Yeah, I completely stand by that statement. It really, really is. It's a raw journey through what he was feeling at the time, and you can feel it all these years later. And again, I think it is one of the most rewatchable shows in history. Certainly my favorite musical. I do have some that are close, but certainly my favorite musical. I want to talk about the actual story itself and the beginning of the show. So that beginning where they're seeing the brass monkey, and it's all very, very dark, and then much like Wizard of Oz, it just all erupts in color and music. How much do you think that opening really draws people into the show? Is that something you can get rid of, or is that integral?
I think I think once you start looking at it as a piece of work, you could sort of isolate it, and on its own, you'd go, well, let's cut this for time. But I think one of the showing things is, if we talk about the filmed version, the Joel Schumacher movie version with Gerard Butler and Emmy Rossum, which does a lot of things, but that takes a lot of time at the beginning. It still takes a time. We don't smash cut. We do not smash cut. He cuts a couple of lines and stuff, but he also adds bits in at the beginning. So I do think it has to be integral to the framing of the story, because otherwise you have to make people forget about, especially now, you have to make people forget about their preconceptions of the Phantom of the Opera, what they think about it going into it. Because that was the same for me. I had my preconceptions, and then I watched the first 15 minutes before we even get into the Phantom of the Opera, and I've forgotten what I was expecting. So I do think, I'm just in it, and it's already, the tone is very clear from that auction scene. You've got Raoul, who is on his own. He is named as a character immediately. He buys the music box, so you're told the music box will be important. And he sings, I think it's 8 lines, not a lot.
So can it be? No, not can it be? What's it? I can't remember, but it's not much lines. It's you get to 666, then it just goes.
Yeah, and then it's the next lot is the chandelier.
Yeah,
and the chandelier is on the stage, and it's in pieces, and it's covered. And as the auctioneer gives this spiel about, we've restored it, we've rigged it with the new electric light, so we may say, and he gives a big cue, and it shoots up into the air, and that's where you get the overture. So you do get a brief, you get the musical interlude of the title track, which I think is enough, and it's enough of a spectacle to really sort of hook you in. And then by the time you've stopped looking at the chandelier, you look down, and Carl is on the stage ready to start singing, and you're in it, and they blur the lines so brilliantly between. They use the audience as the opera audience. They play to that idea throughout the entire show, that when they're on the stage in the opera mode, they have operatic sets up that look like opera sets that have existed for hundreds and hundreds of years. They have fake boxes up against the stage. So you are the opera audience then. So it almost tricks you into being a good opera audience.
The reason I bring it up is so we can talk about the film, because I think as much as it's good in the stage show, and I really did get that Wizard of Oz sort of feeling when you come into it. It's such a framing device. It bookends the film, and I know you've got some thoughts about the film. So I didn't hate the start and the bookend of the film, but I didn't like a lot of the film itself. What did you think?
Yeah. So again, and this is based on the biggest show of my opinion on the film will be that I have seen it twice ever. And I have seen Phantom in London twice in person. And I've got the DVD, and I don't watch the film because I think with the film, if you take any of sort of the big numbers, and again, we'll talk about how they make changes to the Phantom's character. Because again, if you watch the film, that's a much more romantic story. Not least because it's peak Jerry Butler.
He's a handsome man in that film.
He's a handsome man, and his mask is sort of this big.
Yeah.
It's tiny. And when he takes it off, he's slightly burned. That's it.
He's got some slight
burns. That's not... He doesn't need to wear that mask.
No.
Not in the late 1800s. When did it? 1881. In 1881, plenty of people would have slight burns on the cheek. That's nothing, absolutely nothing remarkable. And I think that the film does a lot to neutralise the acidity of the Phantom. Because again, you talk about how Lloyd Webber made himself vulnerable in that portrayal of himself. That's what it is. It's the acidity. It's the nastiness. It's big of someone to go, this is my character, and sometimes I just want to lock her up and not let anyone else have her, and that's the worst side of me. Whereas the Phantom in the Phantom in the movie is a lot more like, he's a romantic hero.
He really is. And you put him up against Captain Bland as well, and I always forget the name of the actor. Patrick
Wilson. Patrick Wilson, who, God bless him, is trying really, really hard. He doesn't. Once again, if we talk about Les Mis next year, we will get into, he will look a lot better in comparison. But having said that, this was studio recorded, this film. So he just, God bless him, does not have the lungs for it. He's okay in harmonies with Emmy Rossum. He's okay in harmonies with Emmy Rossum. They when they start harmonising and All I Ask of You, that's
because she's got a great voice, though. That's why
she's incredible. She carries that entire film on her back.
The only problem I've got with Emmy in that is that as Christine, at any given point, she looks like she's going to go and jump his bones. Him being the Phantom of the Opera, she just sells it so much that this is a love story on both parts. That's my only issue. Like you, I think there should be a degree of separation. But at any point in that film, you look like, is she going to jump on him?
Well, I feel like maybe, I don't know. I think maybe at some point the death of the author comes into this. At some point, the world just decides that this is what this story is. And if enough people sort of decide that, and again, you've got to sort of, if we argue here that the artist is Joel Schumacher, the director, not Andrew Lloyd Webber, the author of the original text, because in a way, Joel Schumacher is doing to the musical what the musical did to the book. And if you were a big fan of the book, you're going to be a lot more angry about what Andrew Lloyd Webber did. In fact, we've not even talked about one of the great bits of Phantom of the Opera trivia, which is that there's another Phantom of the Opera.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole other Phantom of the Opera, which sounds like it'll be more up Gav Street, because it's much more close to the book. It's much more close to the book. But
are we talking the Don Chaney one? The Lon Chaney one?
Yeah, the one that is still has the rights to run, and I've watched bits of it. But the thing with that is that no one cares. It exists as a bit of historical trivia. It exists because it shouldn't exist.
I will say, I think it's a terrific film. That I know we're not really going to talk about it, but it's a terrific film, especially the scene where he actually loses the full mask rather than the half mask. When he loses that, it looks so haunting. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Is that the demonic face with the big teeth and everything?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's what many people think is Dracula.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's legitimate to the actual original text, the actual original book. That is what it is. That's what this story is. And again, we could argue for hours about how much that says about Andrew Lloyd Webber, that he supposedly picked this book up and went, yes, I can turn this into an analogy from my relationship. Like, it's so, because it's not a nice story at all. It's a horror story.
Really not. I'm sorry.
But there's another musical. There's another musical that was
written. I know where you're going to go.
There is another musical. Let me find out.
Phantom of the Paradise.
Is that what it's called? No. So yeah. Is this? There was stage Phantom of the Opera. Still go. It was the same year or around the same time. There was another musical produced, and it was a rights. It was a rights issue.
England.
Yes, and I think so. But it was around the same time, and for some reason, he managed to get the rights to the book.
Yes,
there was
that was the Robert England one.
There we go. Or is it the Ken Hill? Ken Hill.
Oh, was it? Okay, right. Okay, fine.
Ken Hill, 1976. So it actually predates Lloyd Webber's by about 7 years.
I think I'm conflating that.
Yeah. So it actually predated by 10 years, but that was a legitimate. Again, it was an adaptation of the book and the horror film. So I think that again, it's this. You cannot remove Andrew Lloyd Webber from this telling of the narrative. But from the same argument, the second that Andrew Lloyd Webber puts that narrative out into the world, you can't really tell people they're wrong for finding the Phantom to be some sort of sympathetic hero. Because he is a sympathetic character. I feel bad for him in the moments where he's truly, truly vulnerable. You feel for him when you finally get his motivations and why he's broken in the finale of the show. You go, okay, I understand why you're the way you are. I don't condone it.
No, but you understand it.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about one more film though, which I don't know if it's on your radar, but I'm going to put it on if it's not. And it was a late 70s as well, a film called Phantom of the Paradise. Is that something that was on your radar?
No, I can't say
Phantom of the Paradise. That is a musical adaptation of Phantom of the Opera and two other things, Faust and the Picture of Dorian Gray, and it's framed. Yeah, right. I thought this would be something you'd be interested in, and it's framed very much like the Rocky Horror Show. It predates the Rocky Horror Show as well, but it's like a rock opera, and it's very, very, very new wave. In the way in that it's an interesting film. There are some bits in that film which are fantastic, but you have a Christine style character, you have a much more sympathetic Eric character. He calls himself Eric in this one, and then you have another sort of spin on that character, which is essentially the Picture of Dorian Gray, who are at odds. So you've got two variations of the Phantom character. You've got slightly more manipulative version of Christine, but it's a very interesting film to watch, cult classic, and it's one that slips through the radar a little bit. Phantom of the Paradise. I thought that's the one you were going to talk about because it is quite on the fringe of the following, but it's quite well known to specifically film nerds. One last thing about the film itself. They cut out a lot of the supernatural elements from the stage show. How do you feel about that?
Well, so again, I watched the film for the first time before I'd actually seen the show live in person, and again, the 25th cuts a lot of the illusions, the magic tricks, because they can't do it because the theater is built. The theater is built for those illusions to work, and when you take it outside that theater, it doesn't really work. So you can get some cheap pyro, but you have to sort of guess at the rest. You have to. It's much more like a traditional theatre show, because I think the thing that always shocked me about the Phantom was that it's all there. It's all physically there. I'm very used to musicals that make you do theatre of the mind, that make you fill in we're wearing black jumpers so you can't see us, sort of thing. Like for a cheesy example, whereas Phantom doesn't do that. It at no point really asks you to suspend your disbelief to an extreme extent. It goes, no, we're going to show you this, and if we're doing it, it's a cool magic trick. The mirror is a real mirror, and then he's behind the mirror, and they disappear into the mirror, and it's like there's a moment of like, well, I know this is a magic trick, but it's not CGI. It doesn't feel like, oh, look, it doesn't feel like trickery. It feels physical and tangible. I think when you start, again, we're talking about the death of the author, I think that's probably one of the points where they start washing away any sort of context to the original story. Because in the original story, again, the Phantom is a horror character, and the Phantom's backstory is that he is horribly deformed. Again, he's called Eric, that's his name, he has a name. And that he was a freak in freak shows as the short version, but he's also a genius. He's an absolute brilliant genius. He's an illusionist and a mechanic and an inventor and a composer, and he speaks all these languages, and he's just an out of this world intelligence, but he's never been anything but a freak because his face is seriously deformed. And again, that's something that you don't get in the film, because he's living under an opera house because he's a bit ugly.
Because of reasons.
Yeah, because of reasons, because he's got some markings on his cheek that, like, I've known people who've got bigger birthmarks and don't feel the need to terrorize an opera house. Like, I've never.
Always there though. The temptation's always there.
But I've seen, like, when you get to the 25th anniversary, does this very well with the makeup that they put on him. And again, if you look at the horror film, that's a face that would make someone wear a mask and hide under an opera house.
Yes,
it's a face that would make someone it would make someone invent modern magic to utilize modern magic to make people think you're a scary monster, because otherwise they're going to lock you in a cage and make you do 3 sums and build them halls of mirrors and you know, like that, because that was his life. His life was be a freak, be on display, but invent cool things. Come look at the idiot savant. Come look at the ugly idiot savant, basically. Except he doesn't even fit in the category of idiot savant. If we
not in the film in this version, yeah.
And but even I think that's a part of his mischaracterization. Is it's meant to be he's so abhorrent and horrific to people that they do not take 5 seconds to stop and listen to him. So the only way that they'll perform his music and the only way they'll get credit is if he teaches this singer in secret, if he writes this music and just leaves it there for people to find, if he gives instructions in the background, because he is a genius and his instructions do work. It works. There's a moment in the musical where they're taking the piss out of his orchestrations.
When you say the musical, what you're referring to there for people who haven't seen it?
The Phantom of the Opera, the original musical, when he is, there's a moment where the Phantom he's been gone for a while and he's come back and he's written an opera for them to perform. And some of the characters that we've met along the way are not some of the antagonistic characters. They're not taking it seriously. No one can really understand the music. No one can understand what's being asked of them to do. And at one point, the piano starts playing itself in the right key, and they all fall into step. And it displays quite effectively that no one else understands what he's doing. But the second that the genius of it, and then the second he starts playing the piano from remotely, however he's magically making the piano playing himself, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, that's what it was. That's what it was. And it's deliberately, it's less opera, it's more jazz, it's deliberate discordance, which again is presented as in the context of the narrative. Everyone's like, this is an opera house. What is this? Why are we doing this like this? But again, you get into the context of he's trying to hypnotize a woman to come and marry him and be with him forever. And I've always read from that the reason it's discordant is it's all part of the hypnosis. It's all part of the play. The whole narrative, and I don't know if we've got 2 hours to get into the dynamics of the point of no return as a song, as the Phantom dressed as a character, dressed as another character, pretending
probably
to be
not
character on top of that. But it's
very manipulative. It's very manipulative,
yeah,
and he gets a character to lose weight so he can embody that character and be a part of the show himself.
Yeah,
something he's never been able to do before.
Yeah, he's giving notes the whole point through. He's playing the thing and he's giving notes, and one of them is the main tenor, the main male singer is his name's Piangi, and he's a big fat guy, big fat Italian opera singer. In the 20th anniversary, he is played by the Go Compare Man.
Yes,
brilliantly,
true, yeah.
But he is played by the Go Compare Man, who took the role on 2 days' notice and nailed it. But
he'd done it before, though, right? He had done it before.
Yeah, he'd done it before, but he'd done it before a couple of years before and just took it on in 2 days' notice, which I think that's why the costumes don't fit him quite well. They're slightly off and stuff, but anyway, he plays brilliantly. But the point being is that I'm getting so distracted by this. We can spend 14 hours talking about this. But he makes this character lose weight. He leaves a note, and his note for that character is, Don, one must lose some weight. It's not healthy in a man of Piangi's age. And you think it's just a little dig, because by this point the Phantom is being he's full villain. He's not sympathetic at this point. He's cast himself in the antagonistic role.
But he's literally cast himself.
But later on, part of his hope to catch Christine and outplay everyone else, because they're at this point trying to catch him, his play is that he is going to take Piangi's place. So the reason he has made him lose weight is that he can put a cloak on and pose as Piangi. And that's something I didn't get until I watched it again.
Right.
Okay. That's why he's told it.
We've mentioned Shakespeare. This is very Shakespeare. This is so Shakespeare, the way he does this.
Well, this is also so colossally up its own backside from Lloyd Webber here. This is where he goes, now I'm showing off. Because he's writing an opera, and it's called Don Juan, and it's a pastiche of Don Giovanni, which is an actual opera. And and the plot device is, I will try and get this right. The Phantom is posing as the character the Piangi is playing. The character the Piangi is playing is posing as that character's manservant. In the narrative, that character's manservant is posing as the master, and the master is pretending to be the manservant to have an affair with his own wife. If you like making love at midnight and getting caught in the rain.
Fantastic. I think you've nailed it. I was following that along, and that's the way I understood it as well. So I think you nailed it.
Yeah. And it's so twisted. And again, that's one of the plot of it. This, the way that the progression of the music works consistently throughout the show, is it starts beautifully and becomes discordant until it reaches a point, and then it simplifies, and it normally simplifies with one person. I don't know if that's something that you've picked up on, like throughout like Prima Donna and Notes and Twisted Every Way. That it clashes and clashes, and it's like jazz. It builds and it builds, and it's this big massive crescendo, and then one voice will normally cut through and simplify again, and will reset them mistakes. And it's normally Christine.
Normally, well, she's in 90% of the show. You know, she has almost no time off in the show. She's in like 90% of it.
And again, that in itself is a pastiche of itself, because the character of Christine Daae is consistently thrust into the main role of operas that she doesn't want to play the main role in, but she's scared of what the Phantom will do if she doesn't sing. And we start going down the rabbit hole, because at what point is this about Christine Daae, and at what point is this about Sarah Brightman not 100%. Being able to turn down a role that is because it's the role of a lifetime, because it absolutely, like, Phantom is one of the most enduring musicals of all time. So I really enjoy
Sarah Brightman, but this is very much what she'll be known for the rest of her life. I don't think it'll be what Andrew Lloyd Webber's known for. I think he'll still exist with multiple things, but this is Sarah Brightman. Anytime anyone Googles her, it's always going to be Phantom.
Yeah, it's Phantom and That Time to Say Goodbye with Andrea Bocelli, and that's it.
See,
that's the only other thing that ever comes up.
I think that's very much on the peripheral. I really do.
When I've Googled, that's the only other thing of hers that I know she's ever done. Like, realistically, it's always. And then again, like the 25th anniversary, you want to talk about that? They bring her out at the end, and she sings. And she still sings, and they still seem to have some sort of relationship to this day.
She was also in Repo, the Genetic Opera, another weirdo film. If you ever get a chance to watch that, another musical with Anthony Head. So yeah, okay. I want to wrap things up now, but before I do, I'm going to give you a little game, just for funsies, because I know you're going to get all these right. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try my best not to give you a hint or not to sing it, but I'm going to give you lyrics from a song.
Go on.
I want you to tell me if it's from Phantom, what song it is. If it's not from Phantom, tell me what it's from and what song it is, if you can.
Okay.
But no pressure at all. Okay. So, number one. Our passion play has now at last begun. Past all thoughts of right and wrong. One final question. How long should we two wait before we're one? What's that?
Well, it is from Phantom of the Opera, and it's past the point of no return.
Correct. Okay. Number two. Clash of Mauve. Clash of Puce. Fool and King. Fool and Goose. Easy one, that.
Yeah, Masquerade, Phantom.
Correct. Oh. I must wait for the sunrise. I must think of a new life. And I mustn't give in when dawn comes.
That is not Phantom of the Opera.
Any idea what it is?
No, I don't think I do.
Memory.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Passing bells and sculpted angels, bold and monumental.
Yeah, Phantom of the Opera, wishing you were somehow here again.
Correct. Too late for second guessing, too late to go back to sleep. Time to trust my instincts, close my eyes and leap.
That's Defying Gravity. You're not going to get that one past me.
Excellent. There is a lady all in white. Holds me and sings a lullaby. She's nice, and she seems soft to touch.
That's Castle on a Cloud from Les Mis.
Correct. Nailed it. Well done. One final question on Phantom. What's your favourite song?
Oh, very good, very good. I think it has to be a toss-up between Music of the Night, because I just think it's a really, I think that is it's the peak of the Phantom at any point throughout that show. Like, if you have to sum his whole thing up, I think Music of the Night does it perfectly. I think, again, if you took that as a single music video and went, that's their relationship, you would come away from that going, well, this is romantic, and this is.
Cliff Richard did it on the UK chart version.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's a beautiful sort of thing. But the other one, I think, of my sort of out there one would be Point of No Return. I couldn't particularly tell you why, but I think the narrative implications are so big in it, and it's also a tremendous song. I think that's the other thing I was going to say, is that there's not a lot of filler songs in this entire show.
Well, really,
I think if you had to, I was looking at the track listing for the album from the movie, and they've cut all what they call the filler songs, and it's like they cut one song here and there because they can't. All that they cut is the little connective tissue bits. All the major songs,
the stuff that I really enjoy. I like the connective.
I am as connective because that's where all the fun motifs are, and it's where they play off each other, and it's where it turns, and that's where it becomes a narrative. But I would say, if you had to go, what songs can you skip from Phantom of the Opera? There's not really a lot of them, to be honest. Maybe you could skip Prima Donna if you really wanted to. That sort of note section.
That's the one I was going to say, because it lives in that space where it's still very much the opera. I think if you're going to cut one thing, Prima Donna, but without Prima Donna, you don't get those characters, and there's four characters that are really, really explored in that. And
again, so I think the only thing that you could really cut is the ballet. Cut the 5 minutes of ballet that we get, which, you know, I'm sure actually everyone who does Phantom of the Opera would much prefer if they didn't have to also do 5 minutes of ballet every show. But I think it's such a tight show. So I think there are it's a hard one to ask people. I think you could reasonably answer any song in the entire show, and I go, yeah, okay.
Now, Gav, you haven't said much, and I'm sorry for that during this.
I am so sorry. I am so sorry, Gav.
So I'm watching
that's right.
like with everyone else, because it's just I've been literally engrossed with all of it. So
I know that you've seen the show, Gav, and you're aware of it. Do you have a favourite coming away from this?
What do you mean, favourite
song?
Probably the main one. Probably
the Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah,
I get it.
One that lives in my head.
It's replayable. It's massively replayable. Yeah. It's probably the only song that I can listen to on the radio without then having to listen to the entire show.
Yeah.
I will go away and watch it now because I am genuinely interested.
Yeah.
Oh, it's lovely. Such a.
I love that we got a yay from Lauren in the background there.
Yeah, thanks,
very
Lauren.
Very happy.
That wasn't Lauren. That was the opera ghost.
Well, she's
it was the opera ghost.
I've sat through Les Mis and that
the film Les Mis.
That was hard going.
Come back and do Les Mis at some point because I'm desperate to slag off Eddie Redmayne.
But I'd rather watch the actual theatre show than the film. So
no, I get it. Right, Max, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. Tell everyone where we can find you on socials.
So it's Max Brooker 15 on all of the socials, nice and easy to find. And if you can't find me on there with Max Brooker 15, I am probably not on there.
Right. Well, thank you so much for listening to Primetime Pastimes today. Again, if you're working in the wrestling space and want to talk about your passions, please let us know. Otherwise, have a great day or great evening, depending on when you're listening to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers for that. That was